welcome back to episode 3 of Understanding the Enemy, where we are talking about the ancient Arabic order of the nobles of the mystic shrine, or more widely known as the Shriners. I have focused on these parts of Freemasonry first because of my genealogy. So, as we see here, according to Wikipedia, the Shriners are obliged to uphold the fraternity's mission and values, along with active involvement in social and philanthropic causes. So let's understand that upholding the fraternity's mission and values, that it's an oath taken to this body of men, and that you are expected and required to participate in whatever social events or rituals that go along with being a member of this part of Freemasonry. Okay, so we need to back up just a moment to understand the true hierarchy of this Masonic Brotherhood. And according to this article found on the Library of Congress Archives, their website, allow me to quote, "The old records all attest that the time the capitular degrees were conferred in the ordinary lodge as a natural progression to those who passed the chair. Long apparently before the inceptions of modern Templary, Scottish Rite or Mystic Shrine, the English Royal Arch, Scotch Holy Royal Arch, and the French Rose Croix, closely allied to the Royal Arch of today, were considered the culmination of the Masonic education and the capstone of Masonic attainment." So let me pause here to just reiterate that. The mystic shrine is mentioned in correlation to the highest education in Freemasonry and essentially stated as the capstone of Masonic attainment. So let's just think about that for just a minute. Continuing from this article, it goes on to quote a Freemason from Virginia in 1853. "The restlessness of the human heart and the progressive character of the human mind were enough to rationally account for the various rites practiced in Freemasonry beyond the 3 first or symbolic degrees, which constitute its oneness, its indivisibility, and glorious universality." Listen to that language. Listen to what they're really talking about here. This lingo of a one order, a oneness that cannot be divided and that is universal. The article goes on to point out the controversy which followed the establishment of a Grand Lodge in London, demanding complete national allegiance between the new body and the old York Masons of the North. Thence arose the once prevalent epitaphs of moderns applied to the former and ancients applied to the latter, terms which remain to this day in the distinction between plain F and AM and AF and AM. So here we begin to see a defining line between ancients and moderns in the language of Freemasonry. My grandfather, being a Shriner, is of the ancients. That much has become clear to me. So, just for a little additional details regarding the upper echelon of Freemasonry, and still quoting from the same article we've been reading from on the Library of Congress archives, quote, in early Royal Arch Masonry in America, there was a Holy Royal Arch degree derived from the primitive Scottish rite, in which a high priest, captain of the host, and captain general, or the royal arch captain, presided in the East. The first grand chapter of the Royal Arch Masons in America, cutting the Royal Arch degrees away from the Blue Lodge, was established in 1797 in Philadelphia, which was speedily adhered to by all the various state bodies, so that by 1806 it constituted a homogeneous body in each and every state. And let's keep in mind, this is pre-Civil War. Separating the Blue Lodge from the Royal Arch Lodge allowed for an expansion of this secret brotherhood into every state in America. That is essentially what they are saying right here in this article. And just as a side note, it's interesting, Royal Arch equals to the Egyptian reference of their sun god, Ra, R-A. So still quoting here, it is true that the capitular system is incongruous in some particulars. It now consists of Mark Master, Most Excellent Master, Past Master, and Royal Arch degree, but in some states what is now called the cryptic rite, comprising the Royal and Secret Master's degrees, was considered as a part of the Royal Arch Masonry. Finally, there is the degree of high priesthood conferred upon all elected to serve in this office in Royal Arch chapters. Excellent pruning and capable editing have brought the capitular degrees to a great measure of present-day smoothness and coherency. But there is evidence of the one-time fabrication of a patchwork between very old rituals and that of a later date, evidently designed to round the institution out into one of an individual importance. So basically, summarizing here, between the high priesthood in the Royal Arch chapters, they have carefully brought their different degrees in under different names to make it more cohesive between states. And I personally believe that this is what helped them spread so effectively across the United States without necessarily drawing attention to themselves. Understand that the mindset is that of a do-gooder on the outside. Meanwhile, all of these, for a lack of a better word, deviant ritual practices that they do behind closed doors, well, they just don't want us to know about that. So, returning back to the quote, I am now willing to lay it down as an incontrovertible axiom that Freemasonry can only be understood and interpreted by means of astrology and the magical formula of the world anterior to the development of the exact sciences. The same applies to the many ancient scriptures of the Orient as well, and there is a close connection between their symbolisms born of identical origin in cosmic science. Correspondences were worked out between the individual items of various classes of objects, so that the mysteries presented by one class might be described in terms belonging to another. Once again, just summarizing here, this is part of how they've kept it secret for so long, is they make things take on a different name as they move forward in their degrees. That is how I believe they've been able to keep it so well hidden for so long. Thus, the master and senior wards of the lodge represent the zodiacal lion and crab, the sun and moon, positive and negative, male and female principles, fire and water, gold and silver, and so on and so forth. A lot of the principles, let me just pause right here for a minute, a lot of the principles of Freemasonry, or at least in their lingo or how they talk, is you'll hear balance, equilibrium, and that is a lot of their focus, is bringing balance and equilibrium to things. They also go on to say, going back to the quote, the heart and breast, the soul and body, the life or birth and death, wisdom and strength, and a score of other pairs of opposites. It was the delight of the ancient philosopher to construct fables and allegories relating to one set of opposites. So, if you're looking at any of the teachings of the Shriners, for example, you're going to hear a lot of this taught between balance and equilibrium. So to wrap up right here for time purposes, let's end with the finishing of this quote here. The untrained observer will never determine where the genuine ends and the spurious begins. The underlying Masonic gnosis is so old that it can be traced beyond Judea, Egypt, Chaldea, Babylonia, and the Medes into Aryan India. It is never altered in spite of countless vicissitudes and a myriad phases of expression. It brings certain of the old Sanskrit key and passwords down to our own day, without their being recognized as such by eyes focused on London and the year 1717. We're going to have to look. I'm sorry. I have to stop here for a minute because we're going to have to look at that date, 1717, which can also be read as 88, since 1 and 7 is 8 and 1 and 7 is 8. I mean, there seems to be so much to unpack here. There really is. The word capitular degrees needs to be looked at more for sure as well. But in their own words here, we can clearly see the Freemasonic Brotherhood establishing a distinct difference between the lower degrees and the upper degrees of their organizations. And a lot of their cosmic descriptions are in stark contrast to the Word of God. They align more with the secret mystical teachings of Lucifer and other fallen angels. But we're just going to stop here for now.